Good morning. Welcome to Member Focus Monday. I'm Christina Schaefer, Director of Social Media for HAR. We have a very exciting guest this morning, but before I introduce her, I want to mention that today's Member Focus Monday and this week's HAR On the Move podcast is sponsored by Ellison, a new home community in Katy ISD. Ellison is a rewarding place for your clients with beautiful homes from the 200s to 700s, resort-style amenities, parks, a year-round pool, trails, and tennis courts. But it's also rewarding for agents with an incentive program and dedicated agent liaison. Visit ellison.com to learn more about the community, or better yet, stop by their welcome center and take a tour. With that, I want to welcome this morning's guest, the Honorable Tiffany D. Chair of the Housing and Community Affairs Committee for Houston City Council. Welcome.
Good morning, and thank you for the invitation. And good morning, everyone watching Facebook Live.
Yes, good morning, and thank you again to you for coming on our program and sharing such, we have a lot to cover today, but such good information for our members. I know they're very excited to hear from you. If we could just briefly, if you could just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So I don't know if we have enough time for all of that, because like most people, I wear multiple hats, but I grew up in the area that I represent. Went to A-Leaf schools. I'm a homeowner. In my real life, I'm a faculty member at Prairie View A&M University, where I'm the program coordinator and assistant professor of community development. So as you can see, my training and professional experience lends well to me serving as chair of the Housing and Community Affairs Committee. And so ran for office, won, and we're here. So that's pretty much it in a snapshot.
Wonderful. You know, we ask this sometimes of elected officials because I think it's important to kind of get the perspective. But since you were elected in 2019, you've had some time to adjust into your position. How have the expectations of the role matched up to the reality of the role?
Well, I wouldn't say that we've had time to adjust. So, we won in the November general election. We ran into the runoff. So I came in with a double-digit lead in November, and then we had a runoff in December. I was sworn in January 4th, and 1 year and 10 days ago, we shut down the rodeo. So, which changed everything for everyone. So I had a little less than 3 months or 2 months to get my legs, and we had a global pandemic that we're still dealing with. And so it's a unique because no one could really give you advice about navigating as an elected official in the fourth largest city during a global pandemic. Right. This is the first for our generation. And so we really have been creating our own path. And honestly, it was almost as if I went back into campaign mode, because we immediately, our office, in terms of responding to the core services that we were elected to do, public works, solid waste, public safety. There was a high demand and an expectation on the city to respond to coronavirus with PPE, accurate and timely information, mitigating all types of problems, and really being a leader in that. And so we were immediately back into the community. No, there's been no adjustment. Every day it's a new game. And so this has been a 2020. I call 2021 the remix of 2020, because this has been a tough first quarter. But I will tell you, we've been able to do multiple things at once, because there's been an expectation to do multiple things at once.
Wonderful. And we thank you for that work and really leading the way for other cities as well. With the recent winter storm and the lasting consequences, what role, if any, can the city play in trying to help prevent something similar happening in the future?
Great question. If we, had any type of oversight over our own grid, we would have influence there. But I will tell you that we don't. It was amazing how many individuals, even my dad's neighbor, knocked on his door and was like, "Your daughter's on council. What is she saying about this power?" He was like, "Ain't no power. Like, she ain't got power either." So, unbeknownst to individuals, I am not on a special grid. Elected officials were not on a special grid. We were out of power and water as well. And so we had morning briefings every morning, council in the May with OEM and Centerpoint. And I think what we are doing in terms of responding to disaster, because in Houston and our region, we know all too well what disaster looks like. And so we have already created a framework in which we operate. We designated liquid funds from the city in order to respond. Our response around homelessness, our warming centers, those are things that are already in place that we activate. Those issues at the state level, we don't have influence over. So what the city was able to witness was, again, an expectation and a demand on city council and the mayor's office and administration to respond to that need. So immediately once the power was on and people were still without water, potable and drinking water, I remember standing in my own kitchen with water. And they're saying the mayor's going to go up in 20 minutes. Where's your water distribution site? And I didn't have one. And I had less than an hour to flip one. And so we provided close to 15 drops in District F, providing potable and drinking water and food, while I didn't have water and power in my own home. And so that's the type of demand and the type of response that we were able to execute. And making sure that when we still have residents within single family homes that are without water because of it's the demand on the equipment, right? Recently, we're able to make sure that our multifamily homes in the area throughout the city, that they were responded to and they're back online as well.
Wonderful. Again, thank you for all of that work. Especially when you're dealing with yourself. We're aware that the Chapter 9 Design Manual has new changes that would provide more drainage on individual lots, which is great, but can be costly. What are your thoughts on how to balance flood mitigation while also providing access to affordable housing?
Sure. So I think there's multiple ways to see that. We have to, get clear as a city and an industry and a community about, what we feel our contribution needs to be, right? How we're all in this together. I'm proud to say that some of the drainage and flooding issues we've had, that we were investigated after Harvey and with our CDBG mitigation funds from the state, several of those projects locally were awarded, which will help with flooding throughout the city. I know from a local perspective what we're doing in terms of flood, in terms of our GLO sub-agreement, which I'm so grateful we were able to work out how we're getting properties out of those floodplains, making them detention ponds. So it's a collaborative deal, right? So it's not one single ordinance that we issue out that's going to solve everything. It's a collaboration of city government. It's a collaboration of industry. It's a collaboration of just us understanding that the culture and the industry, it's changed, right? You can't continue to have natural disasters at this rate and pace and not have a response, a policy to address that. And those are some of the things that coronavirus is underscoring for us. Now we're thinking about how we respond and how we think about housing during a global pandemic. And so I know that there's criticism and, a pushback around that. And so anytime that there's change, there's a stretch or there's something new, of course you're going to have that feedback. And I don't think that's anything wrong. And it allows us to have those rigorous conversations to get to the very best on how, as a developer, particularly small scale developers where they're operating on a very thin margin, lumber is up, just the products to build a home, the demand is high. And if we want to support those smaller business, not the big box business, but those smaller developers in the city to do what they need to do, it needs to be cost effective for them to stay in business, right? Because we boast as a city of entrepreneurship, you can come here and make it. And we believe that. I believe that. So I think all of that's a work in progress. And those are some of the conversations we're having. As an aside, our Economic Development Committee, let me back up. In February, I hosted a joint meeting with the Housing Committee, Economic Development, and TTI. And so everything doesn't live within housing. When we talk about those items, some of that lives in a different committee. So we had a joint committee to talk about those very things, the policies in place from our permitting, the systems in place from MWBE bidding, and from terms of those smaller firms bidding for those contracts. So our pulse is on that. And here's the deal, we get to change and we get to evolve. And it's been my experience that we as in the city have been willing at a certain level to receive that feedback and investigate how we can make things better for everyone involved.
Okay. Wonderful. If you have questions for Councilmember Thomas, you can type those in. I did see one question that did come in already from Lisa. She said the homeless population has skyrocketed in the suburbs of Houston the past decade. This has led to a rash of squatters and foreclosed homes and homes that are in probate. Is there a clear and concise protocol to which neighboring homeowners can refer to expedite vacating the homes?
So yes, you're right. And so so let me back up. So our numbers are pretty much flat in terms of homelessness. Mm-hmm. So we do our census count and we work with our partners. The pandemic has, of course, families have started to present homelessness due to the eviction crisis. Mm-hmm. But this is Texas, and private property is king and queen. Right. So some of that legislation is at a state level, and those deeds. Right. We deal with a lot of that issue in my particular district. I remember when the Super Bowl came here this last time, and the city wants the downtown to be sparkling clean, right? Because we want businesses and visitors to come. Mm-hmm. And so what happens? They push everyone out. And so I live in West Houston, in A-Leaf, and I was surprised to see the number of individuals like, oh, how did you get out here, right? Mm-hmm. We have no services, we have none of that. What is going on? And so if you are in the city limits, I'm not sure about the county, or any, Pearland, Katy, or any other municipality. But if you are within the city limits, there is a process. The system that we use is 311. That's the tracking and the data system, which allows us to track and then come to resolution. Of course, you can contact the Houston Police Department, but with the climate, I know that the climate around mental health and law enforcement dealing with those experiencing homelessness and mental challenges, it's very sensitive. So to be mindful for that, but they do have trained officers that partner with social workers to do that. And we have, that has demonstrated in my district with the Midwest. There's a unit that's specifically for that, and we've worked in tandem with that around homeless encampments. And so that's the first level. I would do the 311, and then if that's within the city proper, I would also share that information with that district council member so they can walk the process with you to make sure that those loops are closed and that we can get to a resolution to do a few things. One, vacate that property, but secondly, get those individuals housed appropriately, because we do have partners to do that.
Wonderful. Those are excellent tips. What can we do? What can we do to help ensure that there's affordable housing options in the city? And are there any other housing initiatives that we can help with?
So we have a lot going on. Where do we begin? So I think I think it's really important that as HAR provides and offers training to realtors, young realtors, older realtors, those coming into industry, that we're all on the same page about how we're defining affordable housing. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we did a couple of weeks ago at City Council, we voted to change the language and how we articulate that. So we don't have low income. And I often have to check people when they say low income housing. Mm-hmm. Affordable housing, as we define it in the city and as it should be defined, is making sure that you can afford a home that's not taking up more than 30% of your income. Right. And so we want to make sure that Houston has a variety of housing options for all income levels. And we currently don't. So I think there's some cultural things that we have to work in tandem to demystify and to disrupt. That Black and brown neighborhoods are not dangerous, and not to deter families from considering investing there. Mm-hmm. I purchased my home. It was $62,000. Okay. You can't find a house.
No, you can't.
You can't find it. And and so now it's worth almost, more than half. Right. Mm-hmm. So it was a dump. It was a rehab. But I knew going into this neighborhood, and this is the thought. And so I teach community development. And so I tell my students, if everyone leaves the neighborhood, then what? Then what happens, right? Mm-hmm. Then it becomes vulnerable. Then business leaves. If we know that based on census dollars, that business comes based on rooftops, we have to look at housing options in a variety that it might mean that you don't get the biggest commission. You see what I'm saying? It might just mean that you don't get that big check because you sold a $62,000 home. However, right? But that family might invest in that home, revitalize that home. The value shifts and change where they may not have been able to get into that neighborhood 5 years previously, right? As the market continues and change. So now, as I consider to purchase another home, I'm shocked at the prices. And I'm like, what? I'm not paying that money. I paid $50,000, right? And so we have to look at housing a little bit differently. So what's happening at the city in January, we unanimously passed a $125 or so million bond, which will focus on our single family development throughout the city. Mayor Turner is very committed to this. His eye is on creating these affordable homes throughout the city's footprint. And so those funds will support like 4 areas of affordable housing, from small rental home, our land trust housing product, rehab and revitalization. So we're really excited about that. And again, making sure that all Houstonians have an option. And the reality is that everyone's not going to participate in the same type of housing option. We have a very aggressive multifamily development portfolio due to our GLO sub-agreement. And so we'll see that, but we also need to mirror that portfolio with single family housing. So we do plan on doing that. And I would also encourage realtors throughout the city to be very familiar with the housing department and the programs that they offer, from first-time home buyers assistance for families that are interested in transitioning from multifamily to their first-time home. And understanding the programs that we have in place and the dotted lines. So there's one, the Houston Finance Corporation. We have families in the Housing Authority under the 30% AMI that can transition to certain home products. And we have a variety of things. And so we are really looking at housing in a 360 way. That's one of the reasons why we changed the format of the committee to address that.
Wonderful. And I do want to mention that we are working to educate our members on affordable housing and kind of demystify some of it, if you will. We are hosting webinars monthly for affordable housing, and any members tuning in this morning, you can check out har.com/webinars to see those. We actually had one just last week about Section 8 and just really understanding, those home vouchers. We did have a question come in about eviction, tenant eviction. Sure. What is the status on the eviction courts? Are they giving out court dates yet?
Oh, they've been giving out court dates since day one. I mean, and here's the deal: justice of the peace, those duly elected individuals, they run their courts, and that's where evictions live. And so I'm grateful that we were able to pivot our committee to have discussions with entities such as HAR. But earlier on in coronavirus, we met with the Houston Apartment Association. And one of the things I'm asking partners to do before the committee is talk to us about policy recommendations that, from an industry and then from a government practice perspective, that we can look at adopting. And some of that's the eviction, some of the eviction policy in the state, right? Because we've never had a language to address a global pandemic. So to your particular question, yes, families have been evicting or self-evicting since day one, right? So what the city has been able to do, we're in our 3rd round of rent relief. And with this 3rd round, which is our most substantial pot of money, we have an eviction stay through March 31st to mirror the CDC moratorium. But I will tell you that the CDC moratorium is not as effective as many would think. And I know in my district, we're hosting a rent relief registration event and a rent moratorium sign up so those families can certify and preserve in their homes. And a lot of families have self-evicted, which are then in turn are presenting homeless to our centers. And we've invested a little more than 30-something million around homeless programming during this past year. So, some of these judges, if someone says I am unable to pay and I have my moratorium, they decline them. They have. If they qualify, it works, and sometimes it doesn't work out in their favor. And so in my district particularly, we have some of the higher eviction filings in the city. We are highly dense community, and so that's a tie to that, and a lower wage earning family. So it's still happening, and we're doing our very best with
Mm-hmm.
what we do locally. And so it's very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Backtracking here to affordable housing, Brandy said many landlords are hesitant to rent to tenants with housing vouchers. Is there anything we can do as agents to assist people that are in this situation?
Hi, Brandy. Yes, that's a state level. So we have close to, I want to say, a little bit more than 25,000 individuals on a Housing Plus voucher waiting list
Mm-hmm.
in the city. So, but in Texas, a landlord does not have to accept that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think it goes back to culture, and this might be esoteric in nature and thinking so high about how people should perceive. But I think we have to challenge this idea that if someone's coming with a voucher, that they're not deserving of housing, or that they're
Mm-hmm.
going to, they come with some type of baggage, versus one, like, really challenging the system of, one, why is there not enough affordable housing for someone who's making $27,000
Right.
that they can afford in the city,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so from a multifamily perspective, we are looking at affordability and a longer term rate for those in the 50% AMI, workforce housing 80% AMI. But the housing authority, the Houston Housing Authority, which is a separate entity, which we support with home funds and City Beach dollars for the Housing Plus voucher, they run that program. So they're expanding their business model, rather, so they can have more a mixed use of property, so they can have individuals of different income. In terms of how realtors can help, as y'all negotiate and talk to other realtors and property owners about just helping change that language about
Mm-hmm.
the family just because they're attached to the voucher, right? Either we're going to be pro concentration of poverty, which is insane, which we have proven data to show that doesn't work, or we could talk about really being the city that we say we are, and allowing families to have the same opportunity, access to schools and neighborhoods that we want to promote, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because all of us can point to someone that said that when my family moved to this neighborhood, the opportunities became open. And so either we're going to be who we say we are, or we're not.
Yeah. And I think education comes into play here a lot as well. And again, I just mentioned the webinars, but I would encourage anybody who missed that webinar last week to go check out the recording of it. I believe it's up on our YouTube channel, and take a look at it, because they did talk about language in it as well, and really how to help your clients there. Another question that came in, then I want to get back to the questions I have for you, because I have a few more questions for you. We did have a question about, does the city have anything in place to protect senior citizens that have taken out home equity loans to live on but are having trouble paying it back?
No, we do not.
Okay. We have a lot of people thanking you. Brenda just said thank you for changing the label of low income housing to affordable housing. So, and really pointing that out when it's misrepresented as well. So I want to talk a little bit about crime. Crime is a big factor when people are considering, where to live. Based on what you know so far, how do you think the newly announced Chief Finner will do, especially in regard to community involvement and crime prevention?
Oh, I think Troy Finner will be fine. He's been he's a Houstonian, born and raised, and if you've been in the city any portion of time, you've seen Troy Finner, if not doing a briefing,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, at a scene of investigation, but you've seen him in the community. But I think possibly a higher question for your industry peers is becoming fully aware of what's happening in our neighborhoods and cities. And so, my neighbor was robbed 2 weeks ago. They stole all four of his tires, right? And so, they hopped the fence over here. They bust one. It's pervasive, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not happening just in certain neighborhoods. So we all have to do our part. C.O. Bradford once said, "Public safety is all of our responsibility," and I've adopted that because it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that it's important for realtors to not just take and digest your crime statistics from the local news, right? They're going to
Right.
report what current, but really get involved in the Houston Police Department have these PIP meetings where individuals can come and when they really give context to those statistics around domestic violence and homelessness, those encampments, right? And so when you are attempting to offer an alternative in Black and brown or divested neighborhoods and say, hey, young first time couple, I want to show you this neighborhood. You can articulate what's actually happening and what's not happening, right? So there was a time in my previous life, I served on the school board for A-Leaf in 2013 to 2017. And there was a time where every 5 minutes on the news, you would see A-Leaf and it wasn't positive. And so you have to change that story. But I feel very safe walking in my neighborhood, right? I feel very safe riding my bike and walking to the park. And so you want to be able to give that. So it's not just like, oh, what the chief of police is doing. It's like, what's happening at the ground level at the station? Do they have what they need? Are they addressing homelessness? Are they, do they have some type of, XYZ program? It's in your very best interest to know these neighborhoods and to know what crime they're dealing with.
Wonderful. And, we encourage realtors to get involved. We actually promote the PIP meetings, Positive Interaction Program meetings, in our weekly email that goes out to our members, the 5-Minute Realtor. So we encourage them to get involved. They're out in the community, so they see what's happening. So very good. Thank you. So I know the pandemic and the recent cold snap and other disasters have consumed a lot of your time and attention. Can you tell us what you're working on to move the city of Houston forward this year? Just a small question.
There's a lot happening all the time, right? So, we're getting ready to enter in our budget season. And with the American Rescue Plan, that federal legislation has funding for the city to address our looming budget shortfall. We weren't too much concerned with 2021. It was more because we had, 2020. We were concerned more about 2022 and what that budget would look like because of the sales tax revenue. And we are on a property tax cap, and we have a more stringent tax cap than the state. And we decreased our tax rate this year, early fall, right? So that's less revenue that we receive from the city. And so with the American Rescue Plan, we have funds to provide a stopgap to keep those city services in place without disruption and without layoffs, frankly. I was very nervous about what was going to happen because we have very tight purse strings, even though people think the city is overflowing with milk and honey. That's not the case. So in terms of, for me as housing chair, that's a heavy lift. That's where my focus and intentions are, to make sure that we stand up our single family housing program, that we deepen our relationships with our housing partners, and then frankly, that we condition our partners to look at us as a way to offer up policy recommendations. I think my experience has been, people like to complain about what the city is not doing and what the city, right? But then it's like, well, what say you? Well, then what you got? Tell me what you got. What are you offering? Then it's like they have nothing to say. So I think the paradigm has shifted on council, where we are moving towards solutions and resolving certain things so we can be the city that we say we are. And so from a housing perspective, very proud of directing CDBG dollars in the housing department. They are doing phenomenal things around food deserts. That is an amendment myself and a couple of colleagues, Amy Peck and Sally Alcorn, offered last year. And so we're not, looking at going after the big HEBs. They're great, we love them, but there's some other smaller products that offer oranges and bananas and milk and eggs just like everyone else, right? And we had a ribbon cutting not too far. It was in Fifth Ward. I believe a couple of months ago, very limited due to COVID, but we're looking at duplicating that throughout in communities that historically have lack of access to fresh fruits and vegetables, right? And so I'm really proud of that work. You're going to see a lot more of that. Really proud of our homeless initiatives that we're doing. I'm going to work to expand that. They're on a very limited fund budget as well. Also under housing and community affairs is solid waste and veterans. And so you're going to start seeing a lot around our work with veteran affairs, and really making sure that we can get those individuals, number one, their resources, but stabilize housing. So that's what's on my agenda. As budget comes, we'll be presenting budget amendments to the city and the mayor's administration for consideration.
Wonderful. Thank you. A lot of our members are thanking you in the comments, sharing your wisdom on affordable housing and for this great and relevant information. I also see Amber Burton-Alfred, who helped us coordinate this. She is our Director of Governmental Affairs, and she's thanking you for the great information as well. So before we wrap this up this morning, I know you are a very busy woman. Is there anything else that you'd like our members to know, or anything else they can do for you?
I'm always a resource. I do answer my emails, and my inbox is on Facebook. It's me, it's not my staff. So feel free to reach out at districtf@houstontx.gov. Would love to, connect and get to know who you are and share more about what we're doing. I also think that from an industry perspective, it would be a good idea to identify the city boards and commissions, to make sure that we have real estate professionals on certain commissions to speak to those needs. And so to be strategic in influence, to make sure our systems are in place, to be involved with your management districts, to be involved with those local TERs. And so you need real estate professionals, brokers, and those to be involved in that. And so I think, in terms of building your currency in the city, you have to be integrated into the system. So I think that's something that you should add on your agenda and start becoming strategic around that.
Wonderful. And we really appreciate the relationship that we have with you. And if going forward, especially with our affordable housing programs and webinars, if there's anything that we need to know, new initiatives, new programs, we're a phone call away. So we thank you so much for that.
And just as I close, we opened up 13,000 additional vaccination sites yesterday, slots yesterday. We, as of like 8:50, we have 6,000 slots left. So please, you can find all that information on the city's website and our social media handles. So hurry up, sign up for the vaccine so we can do this via happy hour next time so we can all get together. So get your vaccine. We have them available. They're moving fast, but encourage your former clients, seniors, homebound, to take advantage of this.
Absolutely. I look forward to being in the studio sitting next to you next time we do this. So thank you so much for your time. Again, I do want to remind everyone that today's Member Focus Monday and this week's HAR on the Move podcast were sponsored by Ellison, a new home community in Katy ISD. Ellison is a rewarding place for your clients with beautiful homes ranging from the 200s to 700s, resort-style amenities, but it's also rewarding for agents with incentive programs and a dedicated liaison. You can visit their website, ellison.com, to learn more about the community, or just stop in their Welcome Center for a tour. Councilmember Thomas, again, thank you so much for your time this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all next week at 9 a.m. Have a great week. Bye-bye.